is going on? I want to welcome you from half court. Today, I'm Sean Murphy, joined by Crunch Time's own, our own Jeff Iafrady. Jeff, it's so good to see you. Slow week, so appreciate you making the time to be able to be here. Not a lot to talk about, so
Yeah,
good to see you, man.
yeah, it's nothing. I mean, I can't wait to talk about a bunch of nothing. I mean, Tobias
Yeah,
Harris, yeah, who cares? JB Bickerstaff,
yeah, it's just gonna be a lot of flapping our lips for the
yeah,
next hour. You know what I mean? No,
perfect
but
time to do the podcast.
yeah, no, but
Perfect.
Jeff, we were texting, this might be the most filled episode as far as news, updates, things going on. If not in a year, maybe like ever recording this
Mhm.
podcast. So this is going to be a really interesting one. Troy is not with us today as he is traveling to go see family for the holiday. The nerve, the absolute, the gaw of the guy, you know? No, but obviously hope wishing Troy well, and we'll see him back here next week. But nonetheless, that doesn't stop us from having a lot to talk about. And Jeff, before we get into everything, I just want to let the people know to like and subscribe the video down below so they don't miss any of the content, but also that you could see more Jeff Iafrady over at Crunch Time with Jeff Booner and the boys Monday through Friday on youtube.com/Crunch Time Pod. Jeff, any special things with Crunch Time coming up you want to plug?
Well, we'll be breaking down all the Pistons news tonight, 8 p.m. Well, it still be Wednesday, so it'll be 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. tonight.
Yep.
And yeah, Pistons, Lions, whether it's from half court or Crunch Time Sports, we got it covered. So appreciate the plug there.
Again, man. Absolutely, and not too much longer till Lions season either. We
Mhm.
are in striking distance of football being back, so that's gonna be great too. But Jeff, we got a lot to dive into, and there's so much to talk to. I don't even know where to get started. So I'm gonna lay out a couple options for you, and you tell me where you want to start. Does that sound good? Do you want to go with the Pistons hiring JB Bickerstaff as their new head coach? The Pistons drafting Ron Holland, number 5 overall, or the Pistons making the move of getting Tobias Harris in free agency. That's just a small sample size. That doesn't even get to the rest of the league. But Jeff,
You know,
where do you want to start?
I'm going to do the old media trick. We'll save the gravy. So we'll get into not that this specific topic is any less gravy, but JB Bickerstaff. Let's break that down first. We'll get to the Tobias Harris stuff
Yeah.
in a little
Yeah, absolutely. About 12 days ago, as of recording, the Pistons officially moved on from Monty Williams, and they
bit.
wasted no time with their search, and they found their new head coach, according first broken by Shams Charania and James Edwards III. JB Bickerstaff is going to be the new coach of the Detroit Pistons. He came in, sold them on a vision of developing the team and moving the franchise forward. Bickerstaff has 94 wins in the last 2 years in Cleveland and also was the coach for that team over the last 5 years, was instrumental in the development of guys like Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, other players as well. Jeff, I know this isn't a sexy coaching hire like perhaps the Monty Williams coaching hire was this time last season. However, if you look at JB Bickerstaff's resume at all of his stops, one thing he's consistently been good at is setting a culture and helping teams develop. And they've always left in a better position than when he's found them. So I'm curious what your thoughts were when you first saw the news, and now that you've had some time to digest it, what do you think of the JB Bickerstaff hire for the Detroit Pistons?
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. And I recorded a video today just diving into his last 4 years, five if you include the time he was the interim head coach with Cleveland. And I want to say this before I get to the Pistons angle. From JB Bickerstaff's perspective, when you look at the jobs he's taken in the NBA as a head coach, they haven't been the most favorable. They've been actually tough jobs for him. So we have to look at that context as well. And he's going into another tough job, worst team in basketball record wise than over the last couple of years. But when you look at what he did in Cleveland, the thing that I love the most, and we mentioned this with James Borrego, is James Borrego offensive minded. It's a different flavor. JB Bickerstaff more of a defensive minded head coach,
Mhm.
and Cleveland the last 3 years has been a top 7 defense. I mean, they were sixth last year, first the year prior, and seventh the year prior to that. Offensively in 2022 and 2023, he was top 10 in offense and top 10 in defense. So
Yep.
given the talent he had in the last couple of years in Cleveland, I would say that's really where JB was in the best position possible when they got Donovan Mitchell, and you saw the wins. Won a playoff series this past season against the Orlando Magic in 7, lost to the Celtics, of course, who went on to win the NBA championship. So you're getting a head coach who's been in the league for a while as an assistant and a head coach, I think like 20 plus years in the NBA,
Yep.
but someone that players respect, players like, defensive minded head coach. And I know people go right to offense, but people forget how bad this team was defensively. So I think he can help in that area as well. And he's also had experience with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Now you're walking into a situation with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. So I like the hire. We have to accept, Pistons fans have to accept, and we, the media, have to accept that this job is not enticing. I mean, James Borrego pulled himself from consideration. So, people thinking they were going to get the best head coach on the market, it's just not how that works. And I think JB Bickerstaff isn't some guy that you're just kind of like, all right, we're going to settle for him. He's a good coach. Now,
Yep.
we have to, when people bring up, okay, when I mentioned this before, how they have to get this hire right. What I mean by that is someone that can kind of get this franchise back to kind of stability. It's not that you're not hiring JB to be like, okay, JB Bickerstaff, you're our championship head coach, but someone that can just put this thing back on the tracks. And I think JB can do that.
Yeah. I think and I think it's great that you said that because quite frankly, people just have to reframe their expectations with what it looks like to get, like a successful head coaching hire. I know people want to see the Pistons in the back of the, like back in the top of the standings, competing for, like for playoff games and for championships, but really they need to get someone who, like you said, can set the table, can, get this team heading in the right direction foundationally. And
Mhm.
like with JB Bickerstaff, you know exactly what you're getting. And this isn't a guy who, was, like unlike Monty, where you had to like really entice him to, like even consider taking the job. Like this is someone who almost immediately after being let go from Cleveland, he was the first person to meet with the Pistons organization when that job opened up. And he was like ready to go right then and there. And, being close to them in the division, even though obviously he's seen the struggles of the Pistons, he has to like something about this job in order to actually want to take it and take that leap. So, I am curious to see what he can do. Again, I know people bring up the, concerns of what he could do in the playoffs, but if you're telling me that the Cleveland Cavaliers ultimately failed this year because of JB Bickerstaff, I don't really think you watch the Cleveland Cavaliers. And even then, how are they getting past the Boston Celtics? You could have had prime Phil Jackson with Pat Riley as his assistant coach. You weren't beating that Celtics team with that Cavs roster, especially with Donovan Mitchell injured.
Yeah, and the thing I look at is winning a playoff series, and the Pistons are just trying to get to the playoffs. I know ideally and at least for me, I'll speak from my perspective. I mentioned a Chris Quinn or other assistants that are available because, especially for me, and I'll just speak for myself, I'm one of those guys that look at assistants across all sports and think you want to find the next great head coach. I know people go, well, you're hiring guys that have been fired, but you have to understand, like if I'm a hot commodity as an assistant, do I really want my first opportunity to be at the worst team in basketball? Like, there's the side of I can turn this thing around and really make a name for myself if you want the challenge. But then there's the other side of, man, if I don't get this thing right and I'm out in 2 years, boy, it could really hurt my legacy. And it's something that James Borrego went through with Charlotte. Now he's like, I ain't doing that again with the Detroit Pistons. Like, that's a common thing. So, like you said earlier, you nailed it. Manage your expectations. And if people just look at JB and see what he's kind of done for players as well, I think this is a good fit. He's going to hold guys accountable, which is someone you kind of need. I mean,
Mhm.
Monty, you had to give a significant amount of money just to take the job, and now JB takes it. So again, 4 years with a fifth-year team option. Let's just hope he makes it through the contract. Like Monty was the year in. So
Mhm.
if you
He
get 4 years out of him, that's a success.
he's a guy who's always seemed really subdued just from the other side, like observing, especially like off the court. But when he's actually coaching, like some of the clips I've seen over the last few days, this guy's a fiery dude. You know what I mean? Like I think he's someone that, especially with a young team, is someone that can connect and, inspire and gets along with those guys. And I think he can potentially hit the ground running. I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. And especially like Ron Holland, I know he mentioned like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm sure whoever will be my coach, I'm sure they'll love me. I'm sure I'll love them." I think it's a great coaching hire even for the young talent that you have in place. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and on top of that too, you're bringing in some veterans. I mean, Tim Hardaway Jr. On an expiring deal, and Tobias Harris, who just signed today, which we'll get to later. You got a good mix now, and I'm sure they're not done. Might even
yep,
take on more assets with another player with an expiring deal. But even offensively, I know it's probably people's biggest, like, okay, we'll see. Last year, they were 18th in the NBA in offensive rating, but Garland, Mitchell, and Mobley missed 30 games about each. So, the year prior, they were top 10 in offense. So he's capable. Now, is he the best, one of the best coaches in the league? No, you weren't getting that. But he is, I don't think he's a bad hire by any means. I have no problem with this.
Yeah, 100%. And I still think even though this is a really important hire, I would still argue that Fred Vincent is still potentially the biggest hire the Pistons made in
Absolutely.
the coaching staff this season. Like, I don't think people understand, like, how good of a shooting coach he is. Like, I've been listening to, like, more podcasts, and just the more I hear about Fred Vincent, it's like he's one of the 2, like, people regard him as one of the 2 best shooting coaches in the world. This is
Hmm.
the guy that took Lonzo Ball's broken ass jump shot and turned him into a 40+% 3-point shooter before he went down to injury. Like, this guy knows exactly what he's doing in that realm. So
Yep.
get him with Ron Holland, get him with Asar Thompson immediately. Even get him with Cade and Ivy as well. Get them more comfortable and consistent with their jump shot too. And those are the types of things I think you can see that long effect, but also getting them with a head coach who also has experience in player development, who has a track record with getting other guys, like to an area of their potential that we possibly hadn't, seen coming. I think it makes a lot of sense. So,
Agreed. Fred Vincent, I'm excited for him.
mhm.
He's gonna be working a lot of overtime, but he is. I mean, you talked about Lonzo Ball. He worked with Brandon Ingram as well. So every time he's worked with a player, they've at least seen positive results. And there's
Yep.
plenty
Not to
players in the
mention Herb Jones, Trey
Herb Jones.
Murphy.
Yep,
Mhm.
great.
Yep.
Yeah, and it worked out for all of them.
Yep, 100%. So it's gonna be really good, and you brought up a couple of veterans that the Pistons went out and got as well, and I think that's a great next direction to kinda look at is not only did the Pistons, go out and hire their head coach, there was also the draft, and we'll get to that in a minute because, obviously this wasn't as big of a draft class. We didn't do a ton of draft coverage this year, but nonetheless, still a big deal. But perhaps the bigger thing and the more controversial thing is the free agency side of things. The Pistons went out and traded Quentin Grimes to Dallas in exchange for the contract of Tim Hardaway Jr., the expiring contract, along with 3 second-round picks. According to Vince Goodwill, Jeff, the Pistons want to try and take those 3 seconds and somehow turn those into a first. So if that's something that could possibly happen, I think that makes that trade even better. My feelings about the trade are almost exactly my feelings about the head coaching hire, where it's not sexy, but I think it's necessary.
Mhm.
And you look at, like a court like StatMuse posted this like last week when the trade happened. Like Tim Hardaway Jr. had almost 100 more threes last season than the Pistons leading three-point shooter.
Yeah.
So, when you talk about getting a reliable three-point shooter on the team, he definitely fits that bill.
Yeah, and you even go bigger than that. And I saw a post today as well, going through some of the acquisitions. Uh, and shout out to Brady Fred because he put this out. But Fontecchio shot 53% on corner threes last year. Tobias Harris shot 40% on corner threes last year. Tim Hardaway Jr. shot 39% on corner threes last year. And Asar Thompson shot the highest percentage of corner threes for the Pistons, which is 23%. So we'll get to the Tobias Harris stuff, but Tim Hardaway Jr. can shoot the ball, and I know people. I get it, right? It's what have you done for me lately, and we're going to get to that with Tobias Harris because people bring up the donut. But Tobias Harris Jr. It's the same thing. Like, he's a guy who was out of the rotation in the playoffs. Like, guys, let's not forget who Tim Hardaway Jr. is. He's not the savior, but he's definitely going to help out. He can space the floor, and he shoots a pretty good percentage from three on high volume, which is something that you look at. A better defender. He's not a great defender, but he's capable. So I like it. It's an expiring deal. You took on assets, which you already said what Vincent Goodwill reported, which, hopefully down the line you could turn some of those seconds into a future first, which you can use to go acquire talent, some big time talent. But he's somebody that you could potentially flip at the deadline, given there might be a contender that needs some bench depth. And I think Tim Hardaway Jr. is another capable guy. So I don't mind this deal at all. They have to find a way to spend their cap space, and you're not going to sign a bunch of free agents. And I think a efficient way to do that is to trade for guys that are on expiring deals and collect assets. It's the smart thing from Trajan. So I saw this trade. I was a big fan of it. No issue at all for me.
Yeah, when you're in this stage, when when you've been as bad as the Pistons have been over the last few years, and you own as little draft capital as you do, that's
Mhm.
just not a position, that's just not a position that you can be in that equals success. So, even though it's some more of the, like I know we've had to use the term a lot of like the laying the concrete, and it's not, it's really not the sexy move at all. You know, it is some of the things that the Pistons have missed, like that perspective and that, the importance of managing those assets. I think, with respect to Troy Weaver, I think Trajan Langdon is a little bit more calculated in that light. So, and obviously, I know people have wanted to see a little bit more activity as far as more players being signed, but I think when you look at, trading for, like using your cap space in that way, like you have to essentially let the free agency market start to play out and see what teams need to start making moves. I mean, Clay Thompson just signed to the Mavericks, which we'll talk to that later. That requires a 3-team trade to make that happen. Like all the other moves that happen this offseason, a lot of them will need teams to cooperate to move asset to make that, like to move salary to make that happen. And so I think the Pistons playing the patient route on that makes a lot of sense. What have kind of been your thoughts so far?
Yeah, I know people they see the acquiring assets for draft capital and they try to bring up Troy Weaver, but people forget what Troy acquired versus what now Trajan's acquiring. I think what Trajan has acquired, it's only been one player, but Tim Hardaway Jr. I think is could be moved. And Bojan could have been moved, but I think the Pistons waited too long to kind of deal him away. But Joe Harris, like I think Tim Hardaway Jr., and all due respect to Joe Harris, is going to have more of a market, despite how his season ended with the Mavericks. So it's not just acquiring assets that are expiring; it's acquiring assets that could potentially be flipped. And even if he doesn't get flipped, you get a guy for a year, he leaves, you get the money, you get to go spend it elsewhere. So it's really there's no risk. I mean, you're
Yep.
just taking on, you're basically just pushing the money into next offseason, which you will have more to spend in a different free agent class in a year where you're expected to now take a bigger jump. So and this makes sense not only for the near future, but more the long term future. So no issue.
Yeah.
I didn't really get the uproar. I mean, there was a little bit of an uproar. I know most people are okay with it, but people were like freaking out about it. It's like, come on, Quentin Grimes to me, good defender, but he's not someone you're looking at going, okay, he's a future part of this core. I mean, he played very, very bad his tenure in Detroit. I know he was injured, he was dealing with
He
some
only
things, but
he only
he,
played 6 games, but the 6 games he played, he shot 15% from 3. So
he
people are like, "We lost a great 3 and D wing." It's like, guys, with all due respect, the Knicks traded him for a reason.
yeah, he's not someone, in my opinion, that you're pounding the table to re-sign this offseason. So you got a couple seconds in an expiring deal. I'm cool with it.
I think he can be a good fit in Dallas. I think he can definitely make the rotation. I don't know if he'd make their playoff rotation, especially with some of the moves they made today, but definitely curious to see how he does in Dallas. But I definitely think Detroit got a more reliable 3-point shooter in return than
Mhm.
Grimes. Another move that they made as well, the long rumored free agency signing has finally happened, Jeff. The Tobias Harris to Detroit move is official. And I think the question wasn't really whether or not Tobias Harris was going to come to Detroit, because I think there was a sense that reuniting was going to happen. I think the question was how many years and for how much money. And
Yep.
what we learned today is that, as according to reports, Tobias Harris has signed a two-year, $52 million contract with the Detroit Pistons, clocking him at about $26 million a year. There are no options. However, it will already immediately be an expiring deal after this season, and you're getting a starting quality player who is an experienced vet that can help this locker room right away. What are your thoughts? I know when I was on Crunch Time last, there was a pretty controversial debate about Tobias Harris, and I know that you have some people on your show that are not a fan, and there was the hot take of Brandon Ingram's better than Tobias Harris, which I mean, that one, yeah, I mean, yes.
Yeah,
But
and I want to add to that too. The thing about Brandon Ingram, and I guess on paper everyone can admit, yeah, we're interested in Brandon Ingram. Now, I would ask you, where are you getting the assets to go get him? You know, like where? Knicks own your first round pick the next what 2 to 3 years? It might be three, but I don't know if it's two or three. But regardless, yeah, it's just not happening. So when you look at who was available, OG's gone. Hartenstein's gone. Then there were some good solid additions you could have made. Tobias Harris was the best available. I mean, you got a guy who just 2 years ago, not this past season, which he didn't play bad last season, but the season prior, he was 1.1% from three from being a 40% shooter and 2.4% from the free throw line for being a 90% shooter. He already shot 50%. So 2 years ago, he was a combined, what, 3-4% from being a 50-40-90 guy.
Yep.
So when you talk about someone that has played here before, all right, the other part is he fits a need. He's a wing who can shoot the three ball, great at spot up in the corner, which Jay Nivey driving to the basket, Cade Cunningham driving to the basket. You have to pay attention to who's in the corner. And it allows you to now play a Ron Holland, to play in a Star Thompson, because you have someone who is an absolute threat, not just scoring the basketball with good efficiency, but someone that can spot up and take threes and knock them down with catch and shoot opportunities. So is he a guy that's going to, take this team to the 7th seed? No. But Sean, we talk about it all the time. You want to improve. You're the worst team in basketball. Can we get to 25, 30 wins? I think Tobias Harris does that. And I think he also helps your franchise player who you just gave an extension to. It's a 2-year deal, which I love, by the way.
Yep.
It's not long term. You got him for 2 years. There's no team option or anything. It's just strictly 2 years, $26 million. I said 20 to 25. It's one more million more than I predicted. So I'm not going to throw a hissy fit over 1 million. I absolutely love it, Sean. I think he can bring, not only on the court with all the stuff I just laid out, but off the court, an opportunity to kind of mentor a little bit. Not that he's strictly just a mentor, but help out Ron Holland, Asar Thompson, some of these wings, young wings you have. So I love it from all angles. I really don't have an issue with this deal at all. I know some people were talking about the price point, which, guys, you're the Pistons. You won 14 games. You can't pump your chest out and tell free agents to take a discount. I mean, what are we
Right.
doing? You're going to have to overpay for any free agent. And I think they signed the right free agent, Sean, that was available, in my opinion. OG and all these names were talked about. But I love the Tobias Harris move, Sean. Love it.
Yeah, 100%. And, like, I don't know if this is very controversial or not, but, like, I don't even think this is, like, if at all, like, that massive of an overpay, if anything. Like, I think this is about what he's worth. The real problem with Tobias Harris in Philadelphia wasn't Tobias Harris. It was the fact that they chose Tobias Harris to pay a max contract over Jimmy Butler, which was obviously the wrong move. And
Absolutely.
he was miscast in his role in that situation, and he talks about, like, how he was in the playoffs. I get it, but I don't wanna hear anything about Philadelphia in the playoffs and the problem not involving a certain Joel Embiid who needs to be healthy for them to even be a serious consideration during the playoffs, right? And especially you're talking about, just getting there in the first place. This is a
Right.
guy who the last time the Pistons, like, were in playoff scenarios, he was, either on the roster or traded for the guy to go get us there, right? So, he obviously has experience of playing in Detroit. He was there the season the LCA, was built and was, they were brought in. So a lot of history there, but also just a solid, like, high character veteran who
Yes.
not only can help this locker room on that side, but what have we talked about what the Pistons needed all of last year? Veterans who can actually play on the court. And the Pistons got 2 guys that are 32 years old that both are known for their durability. So,
Mhm.
we could talk about all these players' abilities, but the most important ability that the Pistons needs availability. And
Mhm.
both these guys are gonna have that.
Yeah, you nailed it, by the way, with the high character. I know Trajan mentioned it, and it reminded me of what, not saying he is Brad Holmes, but that mindset of we value character. I can appreciate from any person in a position of leadership, because I think people leave that out a lot of the time.
Yep.
Some guys in power positions, it's like you look at talent, or you look at ability, and you just kind of forget the human being. He values that. And Tobias Harris is a great dude, great human being. Not saying you paid him just for that, but someone that you're not going to have to worry about in the locker room. And I love the point you brought up about durability. Played in 70 plus games the last 3 years. So, I mean, that's also a good thing. And 31 years old in the NBA, come on, guys, he can play another 5 years. So he's someone that I think this year is certainly going to help out. I mean, this was a team that was not only the worst 3 point shooting team, but they didn't shoot a lot of attempts. They just couldn't make any. Now
Mhm.
you got someone who, or two guys, and Tim Hardaway too. I know it's an expiring deal, but two guys that are not just able to hit threes, but hit threes at like 6, 7 attempts
Yep.
on good percentages, by the way. So
Mhm.
yeah, I love this for Detroit, and they're not done either. Expect some more moves here.
Yeah, and I imagine that, like, day 1, I imagine Tobias might start the season as the team's, like, second option. I can imagine him being pretty involved in the offense day 1, but, especially if they are, gonna play around with that Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, partnership, depending on what they do with the rest of the offseason, obviously. Like, I definitely see, like, throughout that time, Tobias slowly slipping into more of a 3rd, 4th option. I think Tim Hardaway Jr., he might start off the season in the starting lineup, but I think he's almost certainly a lock at a certain point to be your 6th man or someone coming off the bench. And the nice thing about having more quality veterans like these guys is if you have players on your team that are young rookies or prospects that just aren't ready to play, you don't have to throw them out on the court. And
Mhm.
that is a huge thing because the Pistons just had over the last few years, especially the last couple years in particular, a lot of guys who would just get exposed on a regular night in, night out basis and couldn't have that room to develop.
Yeah, and he's someone that also doesn't need a ton of shots to be productive, which
Yep.
I do. He's not a inefficient someone who's inefficient, going to take a lot of shot attempts. He can get you 11, 12, 13 shots a game and be fine. I
He
mean, that's
doesn't need
kind
a
of
lot of the shot clock either to get his shot. Like he's a
no.
catch and shoot guy.
No, I think in terms of the basketball fit, more than just the X's and O's, yes, but also he's not going to take the ball out of Cade's hands or nothing like that. So, like you said earlier, the whole second, third option thing, it's like okay, you won 14 games. Of course, he's going to get more opportunity here, but let's not act like we have to focus on the big picture. Like, yeah,
Yep.
next season, you hopefully, or at least you hope that Tobias Harris' role just kind of minimizes this year, depending on what they do in free agency, they still got some money left, about 20-ish million. He's going to be your second, third leading scorer, probably your second, to be honest with you. I mean, if he averages 20, I think that probably puts him second. Tate's going
Mhm.
to have 23, 24. But that's not something that you look at and be like, oh, this guy, he's in a bigger role than he deserves. I mean, yeah, he went from a team that was competing for a championship to now your roster, which is the worst team in the NBA. Like he's going to have a bigger role, but I think
Mhm.
someone that can help you, Sean, we talked about with JB, get you back on the rails. I think Tobias Harris can help you get back on the rails a little bit. Not saying
Yep.
he's going to double the team's wins, but make you just at least make them a little bit more watchable. That's what I think Tobias Harris can do.
100%. You're getting 2 highly competitive veterans who know how to be NBA players, and they can
Yep.
come in and teach these guys how to be pros. And I think that's something that they were sorely missing. You might have had guys that could do that from the sidelines. Now you have guys who can do that on the court in real time, and that plays a massive difference. So, I think overall a lot of good moves so far. Another pretty big move that is looming for the Pistons in free agency is the contract extension of Cade Cunningham. It was reported yesterday that a deal has been reached. However, it's been reworded and clarified by ESPN and others that the Pistons have and Cade are in discussions on a 4-year max extension for Cade in Detroit, or 5-year, excuse me, extension for Cade in Detroit. This was, pretty inevitable. This is the rookie maximum extension, that all players get, like when they reach this point of their career, when you put up the numbers that Cade puts up, you more than earn that type of thing. And I think especially when you look at the rosters and the adversity that Cade has had to endure in Detroit his first few years and how he's responded to that, I think those are more than enough reasons to give him, like to give him that, like not only that opportunity, but that trust. Like I think that's more than enough reason to make that contract offer and to believe that he's the guy that you can build around over the next few years to come. What were your thoughts when you saw the extension go down? And, are you excited about the prospects of what Detroit can do as Cade Cunningham continues to blossom in his game?
Yeah, it makes me excited to be able to cover this team with that man for another 5+ years. Hopefully for the rest of his career. I just think Cade he's just special. And the thing people have to understand with Cade is, well, first part I'll say is that we knew this was going to happen because the NBA has incentivizes teams now with this whole like you get more money if you stay and you sign it after your rookie contract's up. So we knew this deal was going to get done. Now the second part is people have to get out of their minds. He's not Luka Doncic. He's not, Anthony Edwards. But you know what he is? A really, really good player, which is hard to find.
Yep.
Very hard. And we know, I mean, we've covered this team and we've been Pistons fans our whole lives. It's hard. We haven't seen too many Cade Cunninghams. I'll tell you that. And usually, even the team in 2004, which had success for a long period of time, that was acquired through trade, through free agency. To have a homegrown guy like Cade Cunningham, as special as he is, people that look at him and look at the Pistons record and say, man, that guy, you're paying that guy, haven't watched any Pistons basketball. If you're locked in and watching games, I know it's been rough, but you get to watch Cade Cunningham. You know how special he was last season. The biggest question to me, and it's not really a question because I think over time this will kind of go away, but really right now with 3 seasons, one of them he missed most, if not the entire season. Yeah, you would look at availability. But other than that, the dude can do it all. Like he's a true Swiss Army knife and someone that you want to build an entire team around. So yeah, get him help, get him shooters. That's what he thrives in, being in that position. He's going to draw so much attention defensively that if you have guys that are capable of knocking down shots, like yeah, he's going to thrive in that. And the fact that he's been as productive as he's been in this situation, Sean, I know you get more attempts, but he's not shooting. I mean, what he's doing, I know the turnovers have been high, but Detroit at least locked down a very, very good player. So this is a great move. I'm glad Trajan Langdon got it done.
Out of curiosity, I wanted to do the search. I think we've talked about this number before, but I wanted to know how many different teammates has Cade Cunningham had in his career
Oh,
since
I
starting in
can't.
the NBA. And I found the number. And Jeff, I just want you to guess. I just want you to try to guess.
Oh my gosh. I know this hot. This number's high. I know this number's high. I'll go 20.
46.
Oh my gosh, it's even higher than I thought. Yeah, that's a lot.
46
And
teammates.
Sean, throw in there 3 different head coaches.
And
Also
this
throw in
isn't, and mind you, this isn't due to this is post pandemic. This is from 2021 on. He has had 46 teammates.
wow.
So you talk about the lack of stability on the coaching bench, but on top of that, the lack of stability as far as what he's had around him on the roster. You bring up all those other rookies, he might or all those other star players, he might not be Luka Doncic, he might not be Anthony Edwards, he might not be Tyrese Halliburton. But you know what all those players have had? Help. Actual tangible help.
Yep.
And the real point is, if you get that alongside Cade Cunningham, I wager he might not be the ceiling of some of those guys, but damn if he won't be close.
Mhm.
And there's really no way of finding out unless you get that guy the exact thing that he needs. Help.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think people get lost in translation is the team has been so bad and people are frustrated, but also forget what they have in Cade Cunningham. I mean, what you look at his numbers too. Look at his rookie year, which I thought he should have won the rookie of the year, but that's neither here nor there. But this past season, averaged 22, 4, and 7. The only players that averaged that: Nikola Jokic, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, and Damian Lillard. And since 1980, there's been 77 instances of 22, 4, and 7. And so it's not something that just commonly happens. I know people are averaging a bunch of points, this or that, but not only that, he makes his teammates better, Sean. And you just went through how many 46?
46.
46 teammates, and he's still giving him
46.
good about 8 assists a game with not that cohesiveness, that consistency. Hopefully he's able to get that. But man, it shows how smart of a basketball player he is. So
Right.
my gosh, that's a
By
lot.
the
46
by the
teammates and 3 different head coaches. That is wild.
by the way, with just the move Detroit's already made this offseason, not even counting any other potential trades, he's already gonna be at 50 by the time the season starts.
Yeah, that's unreal.
Is
That's and I know it's repetitive, but it's true. It's true. It's been rough from the top down, and hopefully Trajan Langdon and JB Bickerstaff can provide some stability for him because you don't want 4 head coaches in 6 seasons. That would not be ideal.
Yep, without a doubt. I mean, for reference, okay, I mean, LeBron's had 200 plus teammates, but when you're already getting close to that and you're only a few years in, you've been on one team,
One
I think
fourth of
that
the way there. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I think that says a lot. But But nonetheless, I think, again, we talk about, like we talk about character, and I think people hear that and they think it's corny, but it's a legitimate thing. I think like guys like Drew Holiday going to 2 teams, and in those seasons immediately helping them win a championship is not a coincidence. I
Mhm.
think character has something to do with it. And, like with Cade, the thing that was the most impressive to me was, like I think you would have seen, especially during that type of losing streak during like those types of woes that the organization has faced. I think a lot of stars in this league or throughout sports would have publicly asked out, or you would have started hearing leaking of like things against other players, against people on the staff. You got none of that out of Cade Cunningham. If anything, he was up at the podium almost each and every night, taking accountability and looking for ways to get better. And he only improved his play as the losing streak went on. And we know it didn't get as bad as it was because of him by any stretch of the imagination. So, continuing to see, like what the Pistons can do around him, the ceiling on him is really high, and time will only tell what he can be. But again, it's similar to like when you're watching, like a rookie quarterback, who doesn't have an offensive line or doesn't have a receiver they can throw it to. It's like you can have freaking Joe Montana back there. If you don't have anyone you can rely on, how successful are you really going to be?
And you got to think how humbling it is for Cade. I mean, he was a number one pick. He's been one of the best players in his class, dating back to when he first started playing basketball. He's always been the best. And now you get to a point where you get drafted to the worst team, and you're still the worst team. What, about to be 4 years into his career, and that can do a lot to a player mentally. So to your point, his leadership, which is something that the Pistons valued over Jalen Green, his maturity. He already had a kid at that point. Very wise, more wise beyond his years, the maturity. You see that, and that's someone that, in my opinion, you don't really question when you're paying that amount of money to. Like that's a guy you want to keep around, and even look at a guy like Jalen Green. Jalen Green could score the ball, but man, the off the court stuff you hear about Jalen Green, you don't have any of that with Cade Cunningham. There's not really any. You don't have to worry about him where he is at in the offseason. You don't have to worry about him during the season off the court. He's just someone that you just don't really have much question marks about, which is what you want in a franchise player. You don't have to worry about him. The guy
Yep.
just loves basketball,
I
loves his family.
mean, it says a lot too that, like Tom Gore is like he was asked point blank, like, are you guys, do you see Cade Cunningham as a player you can build around? Like, do you want to give him that extension? And like he flat out said, like, not only like, we want, like we're definitely gonna be talking with him like with that extension, but it's like he was like, we're so blessed to have Cade Cunningham as our, as our franchise player, as our star we can build around. And I think that's the important thing to keep in perspective is where would this team be if they didn't have
Mhm.
Cade Cunningham? Like that's kind of a morbid thought, but nonetheless, they do. We're blessed for it, and definitely, once that deal does get reached, definitely happy for Cade and his family, more than deserving for that deal. But Jeff, another massive thing that we have not talked about yet, and it's happened about a week ago, is the NBA draft has happened. The Pistons, we brought up his name a couple times, has selected Ron Holland out of the G League Ignite. He was on the only team in basketball that maybe had a rougher time than the Pistons last year. He was on the G League Ignite, who only won 2 games last year. They went 2-32.
Oh
However, uh,
God.
however, I mean, first of all, it's a ton of kids going up against all like grown men, and the G League Ignite was kind of declining as a program. They literally shut it down after this season. But it wasn't because of Ron Holland. He averaged 19 points. He was 27% from 3, but every other area of his game, he was really solid, averaged 2.5 steals, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. He's a guy that, very similar to an Asar Thompson type archetype where he could do a lot of different things, but especially his versatility on the defensive side of the ball is something that stands out right away. Um, I'm really impressed with, like with what I've seen as far as, like the potential of Raw Holland and just like listening to him thus far. He does sound really mature for an 18-year-old kid. But Jeff, what were your thoughts when the draft pick went down? I know Pistons fans wanted to see, that immediate impact of a shooter. I know Dalton Connect was a really popular name. He fell all the way to 17. That was pretty crazy, but what were your thoughts on how, just on the draft overall?
I think he's got one of the highest upsides in the entire draft. That's how I feel about Ron Howland. He was someone that was mocked months ago as someone to go high in the draft, and then all of a sudden he started falling to top 10, late top 10. And he's someone that I didn't really talk about much because I thought another team would go grab him. I talked about Cody Williams. I talked about similar prototype of players, wings. Now, when I saw the Ron Howland selection, I thought to myself, okay, so shooting the ball is something that people want, but better shooting, more shooting. But people didn't have an issue when Brad Holmes would come out months ago, and I know Brad Holmes has a track record, but Brad even said it, and I think GMs think more like this than we think. Brad said, "Free agency is where we address needs. The draft is where we draft potential. It's where we
Yep.
draft the best player available." So I don't think Trajan Langton. I think it would actually be irresponsible of him to sit there and say, "Okay, we have guys with higher ceilings that we see can become really good players, but we're going to take just a shooter just because he's a shooter and we need shooting." I think that'd be irresponsible. So for him to take Ron Holland, I have no issue. I love the draft pick. I think he's a freak of an athlete. And with Fred Vincent, we just talked about him earlier. I think he's going to be very, very integral with Ron Holland's development. And when Trajan spoke about his character, and again, this goes back to what he values. He's first in the gym. He's up every single morning. He's a leader in the locker room amongst young guys, right? He doesn't like to lose, hates losing. And I think with the Pistons, he's gonna, it's good. It's a trait you want here. You want a guy that just hates losing and very, very competitive. And you see what the Knicks did, Sean, Michael Bridges, OG and Anobi. Why are all these teams getting wings, right? You look at the Celtics, Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum. You need wings.
Yep.
And I don't have a problem with drafting another Asar, and I'm
I
not
mean,
saying, and I think that's disrespectful. I think Ron Howland honestly might have a higher ceiling. I have no problem with those two. I think eventually one of them develops a shot. Hopefully, two of them you can play them together. So I have no
mhm.
issue with it. I love the draft pick.
Yeah, I agree. He compared himself to like an earlier career Mikal Bridges, which I think is a really good comparison. Not the Mikal Bridges of right now, where he has that really developed offensive game, more so like that defensive specialist, who who
Yep.
who really is an athletic player who can get, really it's like with like getting down to the basket, how like his downhill speed is just also really elite. He's a guy who can get over the basket. He was number 2 in his high school class before like he got to, the G League Ignite. I wonder where he would have fallen in the draft if he went to college instead. But, nonetheless, I'm excited to see what he can do. And, again, the nice thing about going and getting, a Tobias Harris and going and getting a Tim Hardaway Jr. is you don't have to start him day one. He doesn't even not necessarily have to play more than 10, 15 minutes a night day one. Even if you find that he might even need a couple weeks to go back to the G League and play with the crews and get him more touches in that way, you have that ability because you have players who can come in and can reliably fill minutes. And so, whereas in the past, Ron Holland might have been our number 2 or number 3 option day 1. And that's a lot of pressure to put on a rookie. So, the fact that the Pistons have like built more depth in that position already in such a short amount of time, like he's someone who is, has the potential to be a, like one of, if not our best player in the future. But right now, he can just come in and just be a star in his role.
I think day one, he's already one of your better defenders. So that's someone that I would, I think immediately can make an impact defensively. Now, when you look at offensively, again, a guy who's going to run the basket and make plays, second chance points, like he's a freak, kind of like what Asar was last year, in a way where they're just going to get every rebound possible, offensive and
Mhm.
defensive. Like they're just absolute animals, and that's why just the freak athlete, that type of wing, the Pistons, you can't have enough of them, especially in today's NBA. So I think Ron Holland can develop into a very good player. I mean, you look at Jalen Brown. Jalen Brown wasn't a great shooter coming out. He's actually really, really bad coming out of Cal. I think that's where he came out of.
Yep.
Wasn't great, but developed a shot years into his career. And I think Ron Holland, if he does that, boy, the Pistons got a damn good player, and they're going to see the fruits of their labor in years to come. When you look back at this draft, it wasn't the deepest draft, but at number 5, I thought the Pistons got really good value. I did.
Yep. And the thing that stuck out to me that makes me just, even the floor of Ron Holland, I'm really optimistic about because This quote really jumped out to me. It said, "I'm going to keep doing what it takes to win games, diving on the floor for loose balls and making 50-50 plays. I can defend every position, and I've improved as a facilitator quite a bit playing with other great players." Like, the dude is, like, he talks about, like, working his ass off, but he's a dirty, scrappy player too. Like, this
Mhm.
isn't a guy, who just wants to get all the touches offensively and just do all the flashy things. Like, this is a workhorse type player. So, I again, really high upside and, as you alluded to a minute ago, when you win 14 games, you're in no position to be drafting for fit. You have to draft for upside, get the player, especially when you are in the top 5, you have to go get a player that you like, someone you think you can build around, and someone you think can be the best player in this draft. And I think he definitely has the potential to be the best player in this draft when we look back.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. The Dalton Connect stuff. I thought Dalton was a. I wouldn't be upset with the pick, but man, I understand the reasoning for reaching for a player with a significantly higher upside. Like that
Mhm.
just it makes sense. I think at his worst, like you pointed out, he could still be very very good defensively, and even if he doesn't put together all these offensive skills that we foresee happening, he's still going to be a really good role player, and that
Yep.
to me is like not in a draft where it wasn't the deepest. I mean, you go through and look at the top 10 picks. I think there were other teams that reached worse than the people say the Pistons did, like really bad reaches. So we shall see. I think. I mean, when you look at from the number 1 overall pick from Zachary Reese-Shea to number 5 with Ron Holland, I don't. I call me crazy, but I don't think it's a significant drop off. Like it to
No.
me. I think they're all pretty close, and that's why I think Ron Holland could very well compete to be one of the best players from this draft class.
Yeah, I honestly think there is gonna be very little difference, especially early on,
Hmm.
between a Zachary Reese-Shea and a Ron Holland. There was not a obvious number 1 player in this class whatsoever. So, if anything, I think being at the 5th pick in this type of draft class is almost a blessing in that sense because you can kind of, just go off of what the board gives you a little bit, whereas if you're Atlanta, you're just having to make this impossible guess of who's going to be the best player out of this pool of players when there is no consensus. There is no player that clearly sticks out. And I mean, in my opinion, that's when you get the number 1, like the Anthony Bennett picks of the world. And I don't want to make that like classification to an Anthony Ricochet right away, but it gave me some bad Anthony Bennett vibes when it was going down.
And here's the thing with Trajan from Trajan's perspective, Troy Weaver's first draft was Killian Hayes, and then Tyrese Halliburton turned into the player he was right after he was taken, a couple picks after. I mean, how would Trajan look if he took Dalton Connect and Ron Holland went 7 and Ron Holland became a really good player? And that was someone that people, or Cody Williams or whoever.
It'd be
It
Luke
just
Kennard, Donovan Mitchell all over again.
and that's what you don't want. So I think for his first draft, like I think, and this is the because even when Troy was fired, people still brought up that Killian Hayes draft. I don't think this is going to be a draft, and that people look back in 4 years and be like, man, you could add Dalton Connect. I think Ron Holland is going to be very, very serviceable, if not very, very good. So they're going to get everything out of this fifth overall pick. I'm not worried at all. And they also got Bobby, and the other. I think that was the second round.
Yep, Bobby Klintman. I was just about to bring him up. I was just about to say, am I the only one that thinks that Klintman could potentially make the rotation at some point too? Like looking at his, just like his tool shed, like what he has already. He's coming in already as a competent shooter. He's someone, that looks pretty stout defensively as well, pretty good athlete, played in Australia. Like, and for quite a while was also someone who was trending to be a first round pick. I don't know how this guy was at 37. I'm not saying he's going to come in and play day 1. In fact, I think he'll probably be with the Crews for the majority of the season, but I mean, Jeff, am I crazy to kind of like this second round pick? Am I liking this second round pick more than I should?
You're liking it the perfect amount. And I'm actually with you, Sean. I don't have an issue with this because of where he was mocked. I mean, he was widely projected among a lot of different analysts and experts of him going mid to late first. And you got him in the second round. So he's not, to me, he's a second round pick, but value, great value for the size, the shooting ability, the upside. I mean, I think Booner's well connected in Australia just because back when he was coaching at SVSU, there's a lot of Australian players that they brought in from overseas. And a lot of those guys play in Australia and they know Bobby. and they told Booner that man he's got a high upside. They all love Bobby out there. They think he's a very good player, and he wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the better players, Australian players in this draft that played in Australia. Wink, wink. Alex Sarr also did as well. So
Mhm.
I think Trajan Langdon. I mean, I know it's just, maybe we're hyping it up, but it's fair though. I mean, Bobby's it was a great prospect. A lot of people had Bobby, like I said, late first round, mid first round, and they got him in the second.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about his game, a lot to like about his intangibles. I'm looking forward to seeing these guys play in summer league, which, it feels like it's a long time away. Jeff, we're like 2 weeks away from summer league already.
I know it's moving
We
fast now, Sean. We had a
Uh-huh.
dead era. We had a dead little space there. Now we're moving. Now we're moving.
Things are very much moving right now. I mean, we're 50 minutes in. We haven't even gotten to the rest of the NBA. I mean, for the final like 10, 15 minutes, like, do we just do the spark notes of what's gone down in free agency as a whole? I mean, you got Paul George going to the Philadelphia 76ers. You got Klay Thompson officially leaving Golden State and
Hmm.
going to Dallas and in what's going to be a sign and trade, as it turns out. I feel like the team that I think deserves the most attention and not the most positive light is the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, the trade they made to go get Paul George, it's important to note it was essentially a trade that also got them Kawhi Leonard. So they made all those they were essentially getting two players in that deal. However, to lose Paul George for nothing when it's been widely stated and reported that the Warriors would have given you Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, Chris Paul, a first round pick. Like you would have gotten legit pieces back. And they said, no, we don't want him going to Golden State. So we're just going to let him walk for nothing. When we gave up Shea Gilgis Alexander, all these picks. And by the way, the team we traded all this stuff to, they're in a contention to go win a championship, and they haven't even used any of those picks yet, realistically.
Hmm.
And meanwhile, here we got a 30 plus Kawhi Leonard who we gave the extension to and all those years and money, but not the guy who was actually healthy, who was actually available and playing when you made your Western Conference Finals run. Like it just not a lot of things here are making sense to me, Jeff. When you saw that Paul George is going to Philly, what was your thoughts when you saw that the Clippers just let him walk?
It was odd. I saw the trade package you're talking about with Golden State. I thought that was a great trade off. I mean, it depends how it was all going down. If Paul was like, no, I'm out, there's no chance, or if the Clippers were like, no, I'm okay, we're gonna try and re-sign him regardless. It was dumb. I thought the 76ers got this is great for them. You replaced Tobias Harris with Paul George. The only issue I have with Paul George, and it's not even with Paul, it was with Paul and Kawhi. They are one of the most underachieving, probably one of it's they're up there. The
Probably
most
the most.
underachieving, yeah, underachieving 1-2 punch I've ever seen in my lifetime. At least talent wise, those two, it should have resulted in at least a finals appearance. And they just were not available, whether it was Kawhi dealing with knee injuries or Paul dealing with different injuries. I think they significantly underachieved. So I think a split had to happen, but it doesn't really make sense. I thought the Warriors would have been a perfect place for him, and especially for the Clippers to kind of jumpstart getting assets for him. But hey, makes no sense to me. But hey, Paul in Philly gets to chase the championship. So let's hope Joel and Paul, two guys that can't stay healthy. See how that goes.
Yeah, and I mean, especially heading into their new arena to, lose that type of star. And, now you have, yes, you brought back James Harden. Yes, you brought back Kawhi Leonard. It sounds like the rumors suggest that they might be going after DeMar DeRozan to fill that Paul George slot, but that's a pretty significant, like with all due respect to DeMar DeRozan, that is kind of an Aldi brand Paul George at this point. You're not getting back that same level of production. And I mean, we all knew this team probably wasn't going to be very competitive in the West going forward. They already were ousted in the first round with those guys on the court together, but this just makes what already looked pretty bleak in LA just look infinitely more bleak for the Clippers. I mean, especially when you see SGA just blossoming the way that he is over in Oklahoma City right now with all those players and the excitement and the buzz. that's happening in OKC, you gotta be sick to your stomach if you're Steve Ballmer, man.
Sean, I'm
Sick,
sick to my
sick.
I'm sick to my stomach, and SGA was never a Piston. I'm just sick that we traded the pick away for Blake Griffin, which we could have had SGA. I can't imagine having SGA and then not having him when he becomes one of the best players in the National Basketball Association. So it's a very, very it's gonna be a long couple of years for them, depending on how this
Uh-huh.
goes. I think Tyronn Lue's a really good head coach. I think Kawhi
Yep.
Leonard's very good. I thought that Kawhi comparing him to the best player on planet Earth when he won the championship. But to me, you look at post that championship, it's been more of a going with the flow Kawhi, in my opinion. It seems like he won the NBA championship. He got paid. He went to LA where he wanted to go, where he's from. And now it's just been like he's just kind of content. It just seems like he's load management. He's missing games. It's a very weird. And then you have Paul George, which he's missing games, and it was a weird experiment. But we shall see. I'm excited to see the 76ers. I would still take Boston over them, but I think they're trying to put together a championship roster, so trying
Yeah.
to make moves.
Yeah,
And
I
and Paul
mean,
George can certainly try and defend Jason Tatum or Jalen Brown. He's an upgrade there over Tobias Harris.
I think at the minimum, you'd have to put Philly as the 2nd best team in the East right now. I think
I would agree.
Boston, until proven otherwise, I think Boston's the best team in the East. I think you'd probably have to put Philly 2nd, New York 3rd, but, I mean, nonetheless, you're getting a lot more of a competitive conference there up at the top, and, I although I do think it makes Philly a lot better, it still does come down to, cool, but, like, will this make like Joel Embiid actually healthy and available come April or May? Like, with all due respect to to the great regular seasons we've seen from Joel Embiid, I don't really care if he wins another regular season MVP award. I care if he wins a finals MVP.
Yep.
I care if he wins like an NBA championship as a whole. And so, you know, Paul George can definitely come in, take off the pressure, make it so that Joel Embiid doesn't have to play as many minutes each night. If you can most nights keep Joel Embiid like at or under 30 minutes, like going into the playoffs, like I think that would be huge for their chances. So I think that's something that definitely could potentially be afforded to them by this move. But again, when it actually gets down to crunch time, they're like Joel Embiid and Paul George are 2 players that are not known for their crunch time ability. If anything, that's what they're questioned for.
Mhm.
So I'll be interested to see how that dynamic plays out. But I mean, if you are Philly, you have to be ecstatic because when you traded James Harden, this was like the best case scenario was somehow ending up with the top star in free agency like a Paul George. And you went and got exactly that. Now you have a very small window. You got to capitalize on it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even you look at the Warriors side, them declining to trade Clay to the Lakers in a sign and trade with D'Lo included in that package. They straight up just let him walk to Dallas. With other actually
Although,
was it a
yeah, there'll
trade?
still be a sign and trade in order to make it happen because that's how Clay can get, like his most money, and that's how they can make it work with salaries. But I mean, it definitely feels like the Warriors, kind of a similar thing with how the Clippers lost Paul George. There was kind of the respect thing with Clay and the Warriors. So it is kind of a similar situation where now both the Clippers and the Warriors are kind of like finding themselves going, well, now what?
Yeah, yeah. And they said no to the Lakers. Like screw that. I don't want D'Lo. I don't know what they got again with the Mavericks deal. I don't know what they got in return. I didn't see that.
Yeah,
But
it's
they said
still
no
getting
to
worked out. I think it's probably gonna be a few days before we actually see that become official. But nonetheless, yeah, I mean, the one thing that has been reported is that it looks like they're now shifting their focus to Laurie Markkinen, which I think that could be really interesting, especially, like what that would look like with him and Steph in the pick and roll. But nonetheless, I think, it's one of those things where, ultimately time will tell, right?
Mhm.
It,
Absolutely.
it's gonna be a lot more interesting. And I mean, with Clay, I think Dallas is just a phenomenal fit for him. He's used to playing off the ball, and with a guy like Luka Doncic who has the ball so much in his hands, to have a reliable guy to kick it out to, like Clay at the end of the shot clock, but also to have Kyrie there as well. I mean, I think, Jeff, this is the exact type of move that Dallas needed to put themselves in position to make another finals run. Like, this is the type of move they needed to improve that roster to make sure that this wasn't because in my opinion, if they just ran it back, no changes, I don't think that roster makes it back as constructed because you got such good shooting in a vacuum out of PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. Are you getting that again in a playoff run? I don't think you are.
Yeah, you get the experience with Clay. You get someone that isn't quite, I wouldn't even say quite. He's not close to the same defender he was, but he's 34 years old. He wants to be comfortable. And in Dallas, he can be comfortable. Like you nailed just a couple of seconds ago. He doesn't have Luka's gonna dominate the basketball. Kyrie, him are gonna dominate the basketball. So that opens up opportunities for Clay to do what he does best, which is just shoot the ball, which he's one of the
Yep.
best at it, and catch and shoot opportunities, which he's going to have a lot of them in Dallas. So, does this put them over the Celtics? It moves them closer. I mean, Clay's a good pickup for them. You could do a lot of things for them. You could play him at small forward. He can play defensively. I'm curious to see how he looks this season, but you could play him a little on Jason Tatum in those situations. You have
Mhm.
PJ at the four. They have some good bigs. So I think Clay's a perfect fit in Dallas. And you look at the state taxes. I mean, yeah, he's going to get most of that money, if not all of it. So it's good
Yep.
for him financially, and it's good for him on the court. So I love it. Dallas Mavericks are an organization guys like to play for, and Clay, you get to go to Dallas, get to be comfortable, get paid. Why not?
Yeah,
And get to
exactly.
keep most of it. And Cali doesn't take half of it. Love it.
And now I think by far one of the most interesting things on the NBA calendar is going to be the 4 matchups between the Dallas Mavericks and the Golden State Warriors because that's going to be absolute fireworks seeing Clay going up against his old teammates. I think there's all love there between Steph and Clay and Draymond, I imagine. It really seems to me like the beef is more with the top of the organization and Clay, but nonetheless, that's going to be absolute fireworks. But
Yeah, at Golden State, whew,
yep,
that place is going to be rocking.
yep. And Jeff, the beauty of the NBA is you can even have stories, especially in the summer, that break right at the buzzer of you recording the podcast. And that just happened right now because, as reported by Chris Haynes, Boston Celtics and star Jason Tatum have reached an agreement on a 5-year, $315 million supermax extension with a player option. It is the largest contract in NBA history. Comes on the same day as the Derek White deal being announced, as well as the Celtics ownership announcing that they're going to be selling the team over the next few years. So a lot of stuff going on in Boston, but the one thing that is stable is the core that they have in place, Jeff. They're paying a lot of money, but if you're gonna be locked into the second apron, it's the type of roster that Boston has right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and homegrown players they drafted. Jason Tatum's a guy that you want to forever be in a Celtics uniform. It's not someone you want to let go. And I know he didn't win Finals MVP, but he was don't get it twisted. I mean, he's their best player.
He
On a
will
night
win
like
Finals MVP in the future. I
yeah,
feel comfortable saying that.
yeah, he's a very good player, top 10 player in the NBA. With the cap going up, guys getting paid. I mean, when you have Tobias Harris and players like that making around the 20s, 20-ish million, yeah, Jason Tatum, he's making 60 plus, I guess the number is at this point. Like, that's going to be the asking price. I mean, as the cap goes up and deals get closed with the NBA and TV deals, these guys are going to get 60. Eventually, they'll get 70. It's going to continue to go up. So I know the 60 is shocking. It's a lot of money, but that's years down the line when that contract kicks in, and the cap will already be significantly higher. They're going to have other guys making 50, 60 anyway. So
Yep.
it made sense. Great move by the Celtics to get this done, get them locked up.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you're gonna have like you now have another 4 or 5 year window to go out and win more championships. You have Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, Derek White, all locked up,
Yep.
which is absolutely huge. And we were talking about a year ago now of is Jalen Brown, is Jason Tatum, are they worth being a $600 million duo? Is that the duo that can get you over the top? And we learned this season unequivocally yes. And until proven otherwise, like they are the best team of basketball. We saw Jalen Brown's game elevate with the contract that he with the contract he got. I think we'll see the exact same thing with Jason Tatum.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep, and so really happy for them. The thing that's going to be the most interesting is what happens with the ownership with the Boston Celtics. Because for one, how much is that team going to sell for? Because good lord, like you might see, we might see the first NBA team sell for like $10+ billion with what that brand's worth, what that organization's worth. I can only imagine Bill Simmons is probably scrambling right now, calling all of his rich friends, trying to make something happen. But
You sell high, Sean. Sell high. They just won a
yep,
championship. You sell it. Get
yep.
your money.
I mean, hey, no better time to dip out than getting the 18th banner, right?
Yeah, no
So
question.
yeah, well, we won't be dipping out here anytime soon here at From Half Core. We'll be keeping on bringing episodes each and every week like this one. Jeff, thanks so much for taking the time. And for those of you listening, thanks so much for joining this. If you like the video, please sure to like it down below, subscribe to the channel, but also follow my guy Jeff on X at Jeff Iafrady. Check him out on Crunch Time with Jeff and Booner and the boys. And also, you can find myself at Sean Half Court. But that is going to do it for today, folks. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed.